Hi, I'm John Stevenson, and we're going to be looking at the Song of Songs, chapter 1. We start off the Song of Songs, which is Solomon's. Notice that you can actually get two different titles from this opening statement. You can call it Song of Songs, and that's what I typically call it. Or else you could call it Song of Solomon, and that works as well. And so take your choice. It's the same book. When you say it twice, Song of Songs, you're talking about the superlative song, the great song, like Holy of Holies, and like in Genesis chapter 2, when it says, "In the day you eat of it, you shall surely die." It literally, it's dying, you will die. It's really going to happen. This is the great song. Verse 2, may he kiss me. And automatically, even in the English translation, this is the girl speaking. If she's speaking to the other party and the other party is a he, now that won't always be clear in our English text. It will always be clear in the Greek text. We'll point that out. So may he kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is better than wine. Ki tovim, that's because better or good. Uh, Dodika is that's the term for wine there. Um, and notice better, again, that's plural, tovim, not just tov, but tovim. Your loves are better, is the idea here. And now that's not saying that there's multiple loves. Again, you say it twice, you say it in the plural sometimes just to make it stronger. And she's still speaking. So because that's a masculine ending where she is describing him in that category. We continue, verse 3. And so she's still speaking here. Your oils have a pleasing effect. So we had, may he kiss me for your love. May your oils have a pleasing fragrance. Your name is like purified oil. Therefore, the maidens love you. Notice, I guess they could love her too, but that's not what's in view here. Part of her attraction for him is because he's seen as being attractive to other people. It's runs throughout society. Verse 4: Draw me after you, and let us run together. The king. Now wait a second. Who's the king? Well, that's he is the king, and so notice she's been talking about him in first part of verse 1, and then to him in second part of verse 2, and then verse 3, and first part of verse 4. She's still speaking. She speaks about him. The king has brought me into his chambers. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. We will rejoice in you and be glad. We will extol your love more than wine. Notice how we had your love is better than wine back in verse 2. We'll extol your love more than wine. Rightly do they love you. And you say, who's that? That's the maidens again. Verse 5, we're actually beginning to see the elements of a bit of a story, a narrative, as she says, I am black, Shechorah, I am black but lovely, O daughters of Jerusalem. That's her audience, that's who she's speaking to. Black like the tents of Kedar, like the curtains of Solomon. Now, I imagine in both cases you're describing something dark. And then she repeats that, but different with a different term. Well, actually, it's sort of the same term. Do not stare at me because I am, I'm like those things. I'm swarthy. And so here, Shechar Horeth. And notice it has that same sound at the beginning of it. If I can maybe retranslate that a little bit, and I'm not saying it's wrong, but the first one, I am black, and then this one, because I am blackened. It's the same word, but it's got a little bit of a different ending. So she's describing herself both ways. Now, does that mean she is maybe from another non-Israelite country? No, she explains the darkness of her skin. For the sun has burned me, and literally, it's the sun has glanced at me. But I think burned is the right idea. Her skin has gotten darkened because of the sun over the days and months, and I'm not sure if years are here. Um, and then she explains that my mother's sons were angry with me. Now, this reminds me a bit of when our daughter was a little girl, and I'd get home maybe from work, and she would say, "Do you know what your daughter did?" Well, she's your daughter too, but that is a reference, sort of a reference of separation, and so her mother's sons would be her brothers, but she's a little upset with them, and so my mother's sons were angry with me. They made me caretaker of the vineyards, but I have not taken care of my own vineyard. Now, we're not talking about a vineyard over here and then a vineyard over there, and one belongs to her and the other one doesn't. But rather, they have put her out to work in the vineyards, but she hasn't taken care of her own body. She's describing that as a vineyard. She hasn't taken care of herself. She doesn't, she's not perfumed, and she looks like a working girl, at least to her own eyes, and that's important there. So they've made me caretaker of the vineyards, but I have not taken care of my own vineyards. And already we're beginning to see this sort of figurative language as she describes her body. Verse 7, she's still speaking. Tell me, you whom my soul loves, where do you pasture your flock? Now, notice that word flock. Your flock is italicized. That's not in the text, but it is understood. Where do you pasture? Where do you take care of? That's sheep are usually the idea there. So she is looking at him as though he is a shepherd. And we're going to come to that in just a second. Let's just finish the verse off. Where do you make it lie down at noon? That is your flock. Um, for why should I be like one who veils herself beside the flocks of your companions? Now, that veiling part, that's part of the culture of that part of the world where women would wear veils out in public. Reminds me of a time where my wife and I were at Jerash these are archaeological ruins in the country of Jordan. And we met this couple there that were also visiting the ruins. And he was dressed pretty much the same way I was. And she, from head to toe, was veiled, except for what you see in this picture. Now, this is an artist's conception, but she looked pretty much the same way. She had a veil, and you could see her eyes and a bit of her eyebrows and just the upper part, the upper bridge of her nose, and that was it. And I remember my wife commented later on that she had such beautiful eyes. And we talked with them for a while, and it was pleasant. But notice she is veiled, and notice it's put in a question mark. Why should I be like one who veils herself beside the flocks of your companions? She's doing it, but there's a desire to be maybe a bit more open. Now, the question that we're going to look at, is this a shepherd or is this Solomon? And I have to say, well, the answer is yes. The only masculine person introduced up to this point has been Solomon, and now I have this reference about you, not a new person, but still speaking to him. Where do you pastor? And people have looked at that and said, well, this must be somebody else. This must be a separate person. And Solomon's there, but there's other guys there, and the question is, which one is she going to go for? That's the wrong answer. It now speaks to one who has flocks, but guess what? Solomon had flocks. The shepherd interpretation assumes this is another person. I think it is completely wrong. It's a very new interpretation. We described that in a previous section. What we're going to find out is that the entire book of Song of Songs is chiastic. And there's going to be a wedding, and it's going to be Solomon's wedding, and there's not a third girl and a second girl out there somewhere. The shepherd interpretation assumes this is another person, but Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verse 7 points out that Solomon possessed flocks and herds. Now, this might not have been that early in his career that is speaking of that, but remember that Solomon, he there was a family business. His father had been a shepherd, so it shouldn't surprise us to see Solomon later on also following the family business. So Solomon, I think, is a shepherd. He wasn't initially meant to be the crown prince. Remember, he had older brothers, and they were supposed to be the ones who would eventually reign. Of course, things happen to them, and Solomon does eventually become the king. But shepherding was the family business. It was something that David had done. And even when Saul the previous king before David, when Saul was king, that didn't stop him from plowing his own field. 1 Samuel chapter 11, verse 5. It's he was a he was a plowing king, a farmer king. And likewise, Solomon, even though he's part of the kingly family, he's still a shepherd. He's described in that way. So the idea of a shepherd turned king is part of the Davidic family tradition. That shouldn't surprise us to see that here. Verse 8, if you yourself do not know, most beautiful among women, go forth on the trail of the flock and pasture your young goats by the tents of the shepherd. Again, this sort of sheep and shepherd and flocks motif where they're speaking back and forth. Verse 9, he's still speaking, to me, my darling, you are like my mare. Now, that's not the sort of compliment we usually use in our modernistic day and age, but that is considered to be a compliment today, back then. She's just really put together. She is like a prize mare. Can we call it like that? You're like my mare among the chariots of Pharaoh, and Solomon has seen chariots of Pharaoh before, even though he's working here as a shepherd. He's seen here that. Next, we have verse 10. Your cheeks are lovely with ornaments, your neck with strings of beads. Verse 11, notice he's been talking about what he sees, but now the chorus, we will make for you. So we have a plural here. We're going to look at that plural in a second. But we will make you ornaments of gold. So you have, notice, ornaments, beads, ornaments of gold with beads of silver. So there's a little bit of goes back and forth between the two. As we look at that chorus, but notice the we, the plural. Is this the chorus, or is this merely a plural of majesty, the royal we? Even though I'm not sure if he's king yet, but that's okay. Sometimes we see that used in the Hebrew of the Old Testament, and that might be the case here. Verse 12, while the king was at his table, and this isn't the usual word for table, it's a term that's only used two other times in the Old Testament. It's used in 1st and 2nd Kings, where it's talking about the area, like the all around Jerusalem, and it's that round term that's used there. So at his roundness, I guess it could be a table, could be his area for business. It could be the area around his throne, his domain maybe. But in other words, while the king's doing his kingly thing at business, my perfume gave forth its fragrance. And she's speaking. My beloved is to me a pouch of myrrh which lies all night between my breasts. Myrrh is a sweet smelling sort of thing. My beloved is to me a cluster of henna blossoms. Again, something that smells sweet. Notice in the vineyards, so she's using perfume language to describe her beloved. As he's doing his kingly thing, her mind is going in other directions. She's not really thinking about kingly sorts of things. Myrrh and henna blossoms, those are sweet smelling flowers. But notice in the vineyards of Engedi. And as soon as you say Engedi, this is a place that evokes some past memories from the house of David. Go briefly to Engedi. Now, these aren't vineyards here, but Engedi was this area, means the place of the goat, and this is one of the places where David. Let's zoom in on. We can zoom in on there, sort of a waterfall and a well-watered area that David used as one of his hiding places back when he was on the run from Saul. And it's a beautiful spring in the wilderness. Now, no vineyards there now. Were they back then? I couldn't say for sure. And now he speaks, verse 15, our English translation doesn't have it, but he says, behold, how beautiful you are. And then he's going to say it again, behold. So notice how beautiful you are, my darling, how beautiful. The term there, and I like this translation, Yafeh, we're going to see it translated other ways, but I'm going to always go back to the beautiful idea. I think that works. In fact, there's a city right on the northeast corner of the land of Israel today, Jaffa, I guess maybe they pronounce it with the hard J, Jaffa. But it's the same word here, and it's given that name because it's a beautiful city right on the coast. Um, And now he describes her, not the first description, we're going to see many of these. Your eyes are like doves. And of course, the word for dove, yonim, you remember Yonah, or what we say Jonah, his name meant dove. And he pictures her eyes like this. They are beautiful, they are expressive, they just capture my heart and fly away with it, sort of idea. Don't take these descriptions absolutely literal, or you're going to get into trouble. It's an image of the picture. She speaks now, how handsome you are. There's another behold here. And when she says how handsome, it's our same old friend, Yahweh. How beautiful you are, but we don't usually use beautiful to describe a man. They did back then. They used exactly the same term. So he uses the term for her, and she uses the term for him, and that's okay. How beautiful you are, my beloved, and so pleasant. Indeed, our couch is luxuriant. The beams of our houses are cedars, our rafters cypresses. Now, it's sounds rather odd that she's talking about him, and then she looks at the couch, okay, and then she looks at the house and the rafters, and it could be, especially when we see, notice not our house, but our house is plural. Now, there's rafters in a house, so that doesn't bother me. But our house is plural. You'd think, well, aren't they in one house? What's this about houses? And it could be that this is figurative language. I said, don't take it too literal. That this is figurative language to describe not the house where they are, but to describe their own bodies. And so the beams of our houses are cedars. Now, cedar was considered that's like a premium sort of construction. Um, what's the word for it? A construction material. And as you look at their bodies, they are just really put together well. I think that's the idea here. Is this the strength of youth being described here? Is it the strength of their love? That's a possibility. But this idea of your house as a body, remember that Ecclesiastes 12 uses that in a humorous way. That's an old house, denoting an old body. Their house isn't old. Their houses aren't old. Their houses are in the strength of youth. And it reminds me, and we'll close on this note, it reminds me of a passage over in the New Testament where also the body is referred to as a house, not our present house, but our future house. And I'm referring, of course, to 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 1. For we know that if the earthly tent, which is our house, that's the body in which we live in, is torn down, and let me just say, if Jesus doesn't come within your lifetime, your body is eventually going to fall apart, and whatever they're going to do with it, put it in a hole in the ground and it will decompose. If your house is torn down, we have a building from God, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. You're going to get a new house, a new body, and man, will it be glorious.